Hello, thanks for joining the Mace this week. I am Rosemary Okokotega. Here is today's program in brief. Reps support fuel subsidy removal. Extension of amended 2022 supplementary budget implementation to 31st December this year. House approval of imposition of 20 years imprisonment for exporters, importers of explosives. And on the second half of the program, we will be joined by a ranking lawmaker and author of the Nigeria's Climate Act 2021 to discuss the 9th House and more. We are live on DSTV channel 392, StarTimes TV channel 127, Free TV channel 507. On the UHF band, we are on channel 38.
We are a nation blessed with people of diverse cultures, religions, languages, and opinions. It is ironic that we are now being ripped apart by our greatest strength, our diversity. We have allowed intolerance, insensitivity, bigotry, and nepotism to blind our vision of the greatness we can achieve working together as one. We may not have the same culture, nor religion, nor language, but we all belong to the same nation by the divine will of God. We did not choose to be Nigerians. Nigeria chose us. This nation is our divine heritage, and if we open our eyes, we will realize that what divides us pales in comparison to what unites us. And by the comparison and conciliation of our differences, we will grow until our differences disappear. Our unity cannot be willed by mere declarations, nor do we get unity by ignoring the questions that beg for answers. We must celebrate our diversity and debate our differences without fracturing our unity. Our strength is not in our numbers, but in our unity, because even the weak become strong when united. Nigeria unite.
This message is brought to you by Abuja Broadcasting Corporation, owners and operators of ASO Radio 93.5 FM Abuja, ASO Television DSTV Channel 392, StarTimes Terrestrial Channel 127, Free TV Channel 507, People's TV Channel 285, and UHF Channel 38.
You're watching The Mace on ASO Television. We take off the program from the Green Chamber, where lawmakers registered support for removal of fuel subsidy as captured in the inaugural speech of President Bola Ahmed Tinubu. The support by the lawmakers was sequel to the House adoption of a motion of urgent public importance on the subject, moved by a lawmaker from Lagos State, Mr. Jimo Olajide, at one of the plenary sittings within the week. Here is the content of the motion as presented by the lawmaker.
I therefore move that this House note that Mr. President Bola Ahmed Tinubu on May 29, 2023 made a public pronouncement on fuel subsidy removal. Further notes that President Tinubu is a concerned senior citizen whose agenda is to favor the downtrodden for the purpose of humanity. Aware that there is no provision for fuel subsidy in the 2023 Appropriation Act. Further aware that the current 9th Assembly and the past administration have been giving it a legal backing. Convinced that further legislative actions in supporting Mr. President in delivering dividend of democracy will go a long way in enhancing development, because he asked for it, he campaigned for it, and is ready for the task ahead. Further convinced that President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, the Tutor General of Nigeria politics, who have been tested and trusted, is concerned about the masses and has the meaningful objectives to utilize Nigeria fund appropriately with budgetary reforms agenda, particularly on education, health, infrastructural development, agriculture, food security, and above all, security of lives and property as embedded in the 1999 Constitution as amended. This House therefore resolved to salute his courage and boldness to serve our country, Nigeria, with honesty and integrity. 2, to congratulate him for his readiness for national task ahead and service to humanity. And finally, to appeal to Nigerians to remain patient, resilient, and prayerful so that the President can deliver on his promises. I so move, Mr. Speaker. Thank you.
As you are aware, pump price is already a reflection of the subsidy removal. Still on the workings of the oil sector, report from House Ad Hoc Committee's investigative hearing into the state of refineries and daily consumption of premium motor spirit PMS revealed an estimated sum of 11.350 trillion naira was spent on rehabilitation of 3 moribund refineries so far. The report of the Ad Hoc Committee was presented by the chairman, Mr. Ganiyu Johnson, and considered at the Committee of the Whole.
You all agree with me the importance of functional refineries in our country, okay, and especially in the oil industry. Yes, our assignment was to ascertain the state of the refineries. During our inspection, we noticed that we have 3 refineries in Nigeria: Port Harcourt, Warri, and Kaduna. And the total installed capacity of the 3 of them is 445 barrels per day they produce. However, we noticed also during our inspection that most of them by 2018 they were producing at less than 30%. So federal government now asked them not to produce. So what happened was that they decided to now do trade, what I would call trade by barter, sending the crude oil overseas for PMS. Okay, but the PMS, like my colleague in the other sector, said that they could not determine the quantity of PMS imported into the country. So to date, what we have is that Port Harcourt has been awarded. The refinery at Port Harcourt has been awarded. It's under construction. Warri has been awarded. It's under construction. The only one that is still outstanding is the Kaduna refinery. So part of the recommendation is that government should also urgently award Kaduna refinery. So we hope that by the time all those refineries are on, we should be able to produce about 445 barrels per day, which will mitigate against oil subsidy. However, because of Dangote that is on stream by July, August, we hope that will minimize this issue of oil subsidies. So my part of the recommendation is that government should continuously, have forensic audit on our refineries. Thank you very much.
The report says total losses from the non-functional refineries since 2010 is put at 366 billion 524,140,000 naira only. The report was, however, deferred to Thursday by Deputy Speaker Mr. Idris Wase to enable the ad hoc committee clearly list the recommendations in a template to deal with the specific issues the committee was set up to achieve. In a similar development, the House during plenary on Wednesday received report of its ad hoc committee on the need to investigate the petroleum product subsidy regime in Nigeria. The report, which was led by Mr. Ibrahim Al-Mustafa Aliyu with recommendations, is expected to be published for consideration by the House Committee on Rules and Business before the 9th Assembly winds down its activities come 12th June this year. The House within the week concurred with the Senate on the need to establish Real Estate Regulatory Council of Nigeria as part of efforts geared towards ensuring transparency in the industry. Deputy Majority Leader of the House, Mr. Peter Akpatasin, while speaking on the synopsis of the bill, explained that the council, when established, will provide efficient, effective, and transparent administration of the business of real estate development. The bill, with 34 clauses, was unanimously adopted by the House and will now be listed for third reading, after which it will be transmitted for presidential assent. One of the top proceedings at the Red Chamber within the week is also bordering on housing and its deficit in the nation's capital. Chairman, Senate Committee on FCT, Senator Smart Adeyemi, while addressing newsmen, urged the next minister for the FCTA in the present administration to embark on housing units in order to address perennial housing deficit in the FCT. Senator Adeyemi addressed newsmen after the plenary.
Well, I think the last 8 years in FCT, we've made some appreciable progress. In terms of quite a number of road projects that were ongoing when this government came into office. One good thing about the former administration is that they didn't abandon ongoing projects. Buhari government succeeded in completing many projects that were abandoned, many road projects that were abandoned, especially in FCT. Okay? And I can tell you that when you take a look at it holistically, there have been improvement in the standard of infrastructures in FCT. There is the need for the incoming administration to expand, make effort to open up more districts, because the city is becoming more congested now. Okay, because some of these new districts that were given out on land swap, it will take a while before they open up, for people to inhabit, So there's a need for more districts to be opened up, and there's a need to continue the construction of more roads in Abuja, and there's equally a need to come out with a master plan to ease the problem of accommodation. But more importantly for me, I hold the view that there's a need for federal government to assist the FCT to have more mass housing so that people can have a roof over their head in neighboring area councils. Those are some of the problems confronting Abuja. Accommodation is number one problem, okay, and that is affecting people from performing their lawful duties. Businessmen, they find it difficult to come to Abuja early because they come far away from town. The civil servants do not report. In Abuja, civil servants do not report until maybe 10, 11 or 11 a.m., some 12, because they had problems moving from the area council to the city. And this city is well planned in such a manner that if we have completed the rail lines, the rail system, it will have eased the problem. But you see, we have a lot of problem when you talk about executing some of the master plan of the city. Do you know that the Eagle Square was not meant as Eagle Square in the master plan? In the city of this, the master plan of Abuja, Eagle Square was actually supposed to be a train station. So when the train comes, it will drop workers and they will move around all those secretariats. But today you have turned it to parade ground. So I wonder what's going to happen when you are finishing the rail line. There are so many areas I've seen that have distorted the master plan. Do you know that even Aso Rock is not in the master plan? That where you have the Aso Rock was not where the State House was supposed to be. So there's so many things about the city that people don't even know about it. Okay, but under assure you, I see the possibility of completing the rail line, which will ease transportation, and by extension make it more easier for people who are living in the area councils to be able to come to the city earlier than it is now. And by that, they'll be able to help in the development of the country and accelerating socio-economic development.
Another senator from the East, Senator Orji Carlo, also while speaking to journalists, disclosed there are over 11,000 abandoned projects in the country that need fixing. The lawmaker advised President Bola Ahmed Tinubu to complete the projects and tackle insecurity as they are cause of country's economic woes.
Over 11,000 abandoned projects, and these are what is taking our debt servicing. Secondly, I would also like President Ahmed Tinubu to stamp on security, issue of security, and people of Nigeria. And some of the ministries and parastatals are no longer viable. If I'm issue something like Ministry of Niger Delta, some of those ministries are no longer viable to be ministries. We have NDDC, like we have the Northeast Development Commission, they have no ministry. So the Ministry of Niger Delta should be scrapped off and reposition the NDDC to report directly to the president, which is what is in the act. That in the act, there's no way they say NDDC will report to Ministry of Niger Delta. No, the answer is no. So they should allow the commission as a commission to be able to function purely as a commission. So I think I'm excited to see President Ahmed Bola Tinubu and all people of goodwill in Nigeria should be happy for Nigeria, should be happy for him, should be happy for his family. Those days of stealing public funds are gone. We are planning and ready to return this country to the Nigerian people, because the country must be returned to the people. And
the senator used the opportunity to reveal his stance on the Senate leadership for the coming 10th Assembly.
Well, I cannot step down for anybody. Yes, you are right. We are talking with Governor Yari. Our group and his group are talking. We are in intimate partnership and talk to make sure that no one zone can produce a Senate president. Like I used to tell you people, no one zone can produce a president of Nigeria. It's the same thing. Here is what we are trying to play with Senator Yari is a united partnership that works for Nigeria. So in the coming days and weeks, those partnerships will be unveiled. We will see what the partnership will look like.
We quickly go to an event at the Senate on a weekend preceding this week, precisely Saturday last week. The Senate, in an emergency session, passed a bill which seeks to amend the 2022 Supplementary Appropriation Act, extending implementation of the said budget from the 30th of June to 31st December 2023. The bill, read for the first time on Wednesday, 24th May 2023, received accelerated consideration, scheduled second, third readings. The House, like the Senate, also had to sit on a Sunday, May 28, to pass the bill extending implementation of the amended 2022 supplementary budget to 31st December this year. The House, at the emergency plenary session, considered the bill seeking to approve the sum of 819 billion naira for capital expenditure and for related matters at the Committee of Supply. The 2022 supplementary budget now has the deficit of 8.17 trillion naira and deficit GDP ratio of 4.43% and makes provision for the repair of infrastructure damaged by flood in 2022 across the 36 states and the Federal Capital Territory. Now, this is the second time the lawmakers, both at the Senate and the House, are extending implementation of the capital aspect of the 2022 supplementary budget. It was first extended from March 31 to June 30, 2023. The House also, during the emergency sitting, passed the amendment bill to the Act establishing the Central Bank of Nigeria, CBN, and that of Mobilization, Allocation, and Fiscal Commission Act 2004, and enact the Revenue Mobilization, Allocation, and Fiscal Commission Bill to grant the Commission enforcement powers in the monitoring of accruals to and disbursement of revenue from the Federation account to bring the Act in conformity with the provisions of the 1999 Constitution as amended.
An act to amend the Central Bank of Nigeria Act 2007 and for related matters. Honourable members will recall that the bill was committed to the Committee of the Whole.
Order, honourable members,
on
please.
Thursday, 24th May 2023.
Order, please.
The leader will move for its consideration. Honourable colleagues, the third reading of the bills have been read and passed.
Last Sunday's sitting happened to be the only time the Ninth House had to sit on a weekend to consider and pass a request from the federal government. Back to within the week, the House on Wednesday approved the imposition of 20 years imprisonment and 80 million naira fine on anyone convicted for engaging in offenses bordering on importation or exportation of explosives, either through the sea or air. This followed adoption of clause by clause of the Senate bill seeking to repeal the Explosives Act 1964 and enact the Explosives Bill to regulate the manufacture, storage, possession, use, distribution, purchase, sale, transportation, importation, and exportation of explosives, and for related matters at the Committee of the Whole. This is the Mace on ASO Television. Now to the second part of the program today, the interview segment with a ranking lawmaker in the 9th House of Representatives, the member representing Ikwano, Umuahia, North-South Federal Constituency of Abia State. He was chairman House Committee on Climate in the 8th Assembly and subsequently the head of Global Legislators Organization for a Balanced Environment, Globe International in Africa, as well as president and chairman of Globe Nigeria and Climate Parliament Nigeria. Some call him the father of climate change owing to his feat in sponsoring the all-important bill on climate, which has now become a law and serving as reference point for countries of the world. He is Hon Sam ONUIGBO. Again, Honorable Sam ONUIGBO represents Ikwano, Umuahia North, Umuahia South Federal Constituency of Abia State. You're welcome to the Mace, Honorable.
Thank you very much.
Let me quickly add that Hon ONUIGBO recently got inducted into Nigeria's first ever most valuable Parliament MVP Hall of Fame. Congratulations again.
Thank you very much indeed.
Let's look at the 9th House, the high and the lows as they wind down.
Thank you. In assessments, just like you said, you have the upside, the downside. The 9th National Assembly as a whole, of which the House of Representatives is part of, has performed creditably well. And I'm going to assess them along the lines of major bills that had defied previous houses, but that this assembly, the 9th Assembly, was able to get passed and was also lucky to get presidential assent. Number one on that line is the Petroleum Industry Bill that has now become the Petroleum Industry Act. The bill had been in the National Assembly for donkey years, and close to 20 years actually. And at every National Assembly, whether it's the 5th or the 6th, or just it went up and down. At the end of the day, it never got assent. So it was during the 9th National Assembly that the Petroleum Industry Bill became an act. And we have to take the credit, and we also have to commend Mr. President for assenting to it. Similarly, the 9th National Assembly was also to completely review and repeal, some electoral acts that were there before, but that didn't catch some sensitive segments of our electoral processes, which we want to improve upon. And it was during this 9th National Assembly that we were able to start the process working with INEC, Ministry of Justice, the civil society organizations. From there, we were able to repeal previous electoral acts and then now enacted the Electoral Act 2022, which, of course, from the outcome of the last election generally, you will agree with me that there were some marked improvements in some areas. At least we saw how some very powerful former governors and all that could not make it back to the National Assembly. Some were there before they became governors. So it was through that Electoral Act. And that's a positive development, because that act introduced the use of technology, which is helping the electorate now to even evaluate their own, how they cast their votes and what is going on. I'm not saying it's perfect, but it has laid a very strong foundation. Similarly, it was also during the 9th National Assembly that the climate change bill, which failed in the 6th Assembly, failed in the 7th Assembly, and even in the 8th Assembly when I first sponsored it. It was during this 9th National Assembly that we were able to pass it, because I had to re-sponsor it and then work on accommodating all those areas that were creating problems in the past through extensive and detailed consultations with the executive, different ministries, and also the civil society. And at the end of the day, Mr. President graciously assented to it. So, and we also passed, resolutions on issues of security, such that we had a summit and then made our report available to the executive. At some point, those interventions had to make former president actually, review the security architecture, even in changing some of the service chiefs. So there were so many things. But I also know that there were challenges, like when we started, and there's always the appearance that they just go there and sit down, they're not doing anything. But it is only when you come close and begin to take one by one what we have done. And of course, we had most bills assented to in this 9th Assembly. So there are several positive sides which you can juxtapose against whatever, downside that anybody's talking about. So I think it was a great outing.
Oh yes, Honorable, you've actually been on the high side, but despite the high points that you've recorded, there must be some challenges which we will like to know that have hampered the level at which you could have moved, or the level of performance the 9th Assembly could have recorded, maybe one or two.
Today we're operating from a temporary accommodation, which is a clear indication that the main National Assembly, location, or the dome where we used to stay, the chambers, they were in a total state of disrepair. It is now that it's being fixed, and we are now managing. So now it is not the same setting, because I remember the other day I was moving emotion, the little challenges that we had, in terms of even when people stood up at one angle, just because that the cameras were not, positioned at a strategic location where they are being positioned to capture them. You see the camera picking up somebody who was not even close to you. So that's a kind of challenge. We also know that we didn't get the resources that we were supposed to get, to be able, because there's always the appearance, like I said before, that there are about 469 people, and then they will now work it against the total budget, which has been on the decrease instead of on the increase. If you check the budget we had, maybe in the 6th Assembly and all that, it is lower than that. So, but the error there is that people don't realize that the total budget for National Assembly covers the employees of the National Assembly, employees of the Commission, the aides, and all that. So that challenge is there, and the challenge of the needed equipment for the House to operate. It could never have been perfect. It was not.
Okay. It's a good thing that you mentioned the paucity of funds, because I remember there was a time the spokesman did come out to announce publicly that the House was lacking funds to perform necessary legislative functions. So let's go ahead. You did mention the passage into law of the climate change bill. Thanks to you sponsoring that. And let's look at some of the schedules that you think already are beginning to impact on the generality of the country and the economy. Nigerians are beginning to feel the impact.
Thank you very much. Yes, the climate change bill, like I said, went through terrible experiences, beginning from the 6th Assembly. And today, we have a Climate Change Act 2021, which by the grace of God I sponsored. In terms of the objective of the act is intended, to mainstream climate change actions into whatever we're doing, and then ensure that we set up the National Council on Climate Change. And also to be sure that we have a green, development that is sustainable. Not that today you develop, tomorrow you have a green environment, then the day after everywhere has dried up. Or you are producing oil, prospecting for oil in a manner that allows pollution to destroy the environment. No, those things are not allowed, because even some sections of the act allows an individual who feels that something is being done wrong in an area to institute an action. It does not necessarily have to be to you directly, so that you don't go to court and start hearing about it does not have local standing. Section 34 of the Act provides for that. That if anybody is doing anything that is seen or known to be obstructing or affecting the overall objective of having a green growth in a sustainable way, that any individual can take an action.
So you did mention the constitution of a council. Do we have that?
Oh, absolutely. So you now see that this act has, a wide coverage. We also go, if you talk about Section 26 of the Act, it talks about including this in the curricula to make sure that children, are taught this from primary down. Because we need it. The way climate change is coming, the way it's impacting on us right now, some people do not know because you think you live in a safe area. But either the air you breathe, whether it is soot coming from, wrong refining of petroleum in the river states, in Akwa Ibom, but we are inhaling it here in the country and even beyond. Whether you're talking about that desertification is resting down at around 0.6 kilometers per annum from north southwards, you are going to feel it. You want to talk about the drying up of Lake Chad and all those challenges. Farmers said there's clashes. Those are byproducts. They're coming out of the challenges of climate change. So several sections of the Act have already been activated. You talked about the National Council on Climate Change. I think that's in Section 3. And the Act says, yes, we should have this. And then in Section 4, it gives them special functions, like coordinating activities that are geared towards achieving the overall objective. But let me mention one thing that is very important about the National Council on Climate Change. We structure the Act in such a way that the National Council on Climate Change will be presided over by the President of the Federal Republic. The reason is to eliminate what I have coined as peer jealousy. That's a situation where, because we are peers or because we are equals as ministers, if Minister A calls a meeting, Minister C now looks for the most junior person, not even a director, to send to go and represent him because he's working towards sabotaging, the intention or what that meeting was called for. So to eliminate that, we decided now that it's important to have Mr. President chair the National Council of, on climate change, because this is an existential threat. It's not something to be toyed with or something to, allow for people to start playing politics with it. So that council has Mr. President, the vice, and then all the other ministers, whether you're talking about environment, agriculture, petroleum, water resources, mining, transportation, women affairs. And you also have the National Security Advisor as a member of the council, because climate change has security content. According to the UN resolution of 281 of 2009, you discover that climate change has security issues. That's the reason why we are talking about farmers and herders, forced migration, and all those things that come to impact on the livelihoods of people. So the National Security Advisor is a member. Then the chairman, because we made the act in such a way that it captures the subnational.
Okay.
So the chairman of the Governors Forum is also a member of the council. He should always sit there when the decisions are made so that he can help convey that to the other governors. Then you now have the president of the Association of Local Governments of Nigeria. Because as a matter of fact, climate change, whatever greenhouse gas emissions, they are not coming from Aso Rock. They are coming from the subnational areas, forests in the local governments and states and all that. And that's why everyone has to be involved. Similarly, we also have women. Apart from the Minister of Women Affairs, we have women, we have youth, we have the civil, society representatives, as well as those in the organized private sector. Because you see people producing cement, doing this and doing that, refining petroleum. They need to know the direction of the government as far as this issue is concerned. So you can see that it's almost all embracing. But to part of your question on whether some sections have already been put into effect, yes, some have been operationalized in that Mr. President, after assenting to it in 2021, he was able to inaugurate the council last September. And February this year, he was able to hold the first meeting with them. And the Director General has been appointed, an office set up, and they're in the process of ensuring that critical provisions of the Act, like sections 19 and 20, that talks about carbon budget to check emissions, those things have to be, handled. That's why I moved the motion, about 2 Thursdays ago.
Oh, well, that's a great way to go, knowing that everybody is involved in the process and
Absolutely.
that we are beginning to put most of the sections into effect so that we have better climate. So let's go ahead quickly to your induction into Nigeria's first ever most valuable parliament, MVP Hall of Fame.
Yeah.
How does that make you feel?
It makes me, I am humbled by the special recognition as a most valuable parliamentarian, actually, inducted into the Hall of Fame of the National Assembly, for the purpose that it's intended to encourage people to come in and try to give their best. Because that's something I always say. When out of hundreds of thousands of people or even millions, even those who are better educated than you, richer than you, they say, okay, let Okoko go. Let him go and represent us. They yield their positions and allow you to move forward. It means you are owing a debt of service. So when you get to a place like that, you have a duty, an abiding duty, to be able to perform, to contribute your own little quota, so that together through such little contributions, we'll be able to build a great nation. So I thank God that in such a detailed process, assessment that took close to 3 years, where they were doing it stage by stage and evaluating. It's not based on any pecuniary consideration. It's based on your contribution. And when these contributions are recognized and put together, they have the potential to strengthen and deepen our democratic practice. So it's very, very, it's a worthy development. It's also worthy of, mention, commendation, and emulation where possible.
All right, should I say it's somehow linked to maybe some of the community projects you've carried out? I'm aware that some of the projects have been commissioned, like schools and all of that. Did the organizers take into cognizance areas as that?
I don't know if what they used, whether that was part of the matrix. But I know that they focused on, you move a bill. You have moved a bill. What kind of bill is it? Is it that you moved the bill, it is read first time, and so what happens? Did you follow the processing for it to progress to second reading? And then after that, committee stage, and when the report has come back, committee of the whole and all that, before it is passed, read for the third time and passed. Did you follow that up? And even after that, did you also ensure that it moved through the bureaucracy to get to the Senate and then from there? So that's that. But more importantly, what is the impact of the bill? What contribution is it making to the society? Is it that you have managed to process a bill and then Mr. President signed? How is that impacting meaningfully, productively on the well-being of those that you are representing? So I think that was number one. And then the other one, they also considered character value in terms of, it's not enough that you are here and then you pass the bill, but what kind of
lawmaker are you?
What impression are you leaving there? What character, what image are you bringing to bear? So these are the things that I understand, form their consideration. And for sponsoring the Climate Change Act, which, like I mentioned to a few people when I was speaking a while ago, last week I was in Lagos to deliver a paper to parliamentarians, bureaucrats, and academics who came from 15 countries. And out of these 15 countries in Africa, it's only Nigeria that has a Climate Change Act.
Wow.
So I had to guide them on the guidance, the journey, and little things you have to do to think about little pitfalls. There are pitfalls somewhere, and how approaches you can use to overcome that. So it's the value, the impact, and what is that going to add to the society? I think these were the main factors. The other one about projects done is to the glory of God that in addition to doing this, God helped me also to be able to facilitate massive projects, within my federal constituency.
Reaching out, giving back to your community, because that is your first constituent.
That's the reason why some people yielded their own position, their opportunities, their strength, their resources, and allowed you to go, because some of them are even better educated than you. So you owe them a duty of service.
All right now. So quickly, you are one lawmaker who will be missing out when the 10th Assembly commences. How do you feel about that? And what are you falling back to, especially in the meantime, because we know you're still in court concerning your senatorial bid?
Yes, I'm in court. I would not speak much about the court processes. We're in court because we're excluded. But anyway, that's going to be decided by the court. But we should understand one thing. When thinkers like James Harrington, who even wrote about separation of powers and tenure before Montesquieu came, when they talked about these things, the essence is, from time to time, there should be a renewal. Nobody becomes a traditional ruler or whatever, sitting permanently. But if you are performing well, the electorate, they have some kind of duty to help you to be re-elected. We know that election in Nigeria is still undergoing some improvement. So for me, I don't see it as any setback. I would rather go back and continue with teaching because I'm a teacher. Whether in primary or secondary, I like to give out knowledge.
I like to see you in class, Honorable.
Oh yeah, I like to give out knowledge, whatever knowledge that I have. That's one. Then the other thing is, my person is all about bringing about changes in whatever I do. And I have done that, whether when I was working at the U.S. Embassy, where I was for close to 15 years, or when I was advisor here at the National Assembly to the then Speaker, His Excellency Right Honorable Major Bank, or even when I went to my state to be Commissioner for Lands and then Commissioner for Finance. Wherever I go, I try to make changes. And that's why I'm happy about this induction. It's a clear evidence that one has a track record of performance. And you are not bothered about pecuniary interest and all that. Just bring about positive changes, because that's how other developed societies, that's how they got to where they are.
Okay, it's been a long time coming, Honorable. So are we looking at maybe somehow finding your way back into the legislature?
Leave everything to the electorate. Leave everything to those who have used the power of their thumbs to get you to a elevated Olympian position. If they ask me back, say, okay, come and represent, we've been able to review your works and we are pleased with it. You have to wait and see, because it comes with a lot of stress. It does come with a lot of stress, because the demands that are made, demands that are made of you, they are made with a sense of entitlement. But I also know that over time, as we are improving in our democratic practice, we begin to see a situation where people recognize positive contributions made by their representatives, and then on the strength of that, continue to re-elect them until, even they say, okay, I think I need to give chance. But it shouldn't be, a free-for-all, kind of do-or-die approach.
All right, quickly, Honorable, how do you see the 10th Assembly coming along? What is your wish, even though you're not going to be there?
Oh, my wish is simple. I pray for them. I would like them to, like I have used the word here, deepen and strengthen and even broaden democratic practice as a whole. Because for us to be engaged, involved in unbroken democratic dispensation for 24 years, going to 25, that's not a small time. And that's a little around a quarter of a century. So I would like to see them improve more, contribute more, make laws that have the potential to impact meaningfully on the well-being of those that they are representing, and also guard the institution very well, because without the legislature, you don't have any democracy, because that's where you have the representatives of the people speaking for them, making laws, and of course that's why it is the first arm of government.
Okay, now there's one fear though for the 10th Assembly. I know before the election, the director of NILS, National Institute for Legislative and Democratic Studies, did mention that there could be high level of turnover of lawmakers, and after the election, we've seen that a lot of newbies are coming on the floor of the green chamber, even at the Senate as well. Do you see that trend affecting performance of the 10th Assembly?
Yeah, well, there's no doubt about it that from the beginning, there's always the fear that perhaps it would just affect the performance. But if you came to National Assembly with a clear intention to land a thread there and work for your people, and by extension, work for the entire nation, I expect them to just get over the initial challenges, because whether you're a professor, you're a lawyer, whatever you are, when you get to National Assembly, you have to learn how bills, motions are moved and how they are followed for you to be able to get things done, or how you go run around for projects for your community. So they'll have to learn. It's a learning process. I wish them well.
All right, thank you so much, Honorable. It's been quite an interesting time on the Mace today. But before I let you go on the program today, in less than 2 weeks, the 10th Assembly will be inaugurated, and we have to be embraced by new leadership, new speaker, new Senate. At the moment, a lot of tussle is going on, a lot of politicking. Do you have any word?
My word is to wish them well, wish them success, whoever emerges, that the person and his team that will go ahead to defend the institution, to deepen the ethos of our democratic practice. Like I said earlier, the National Assembly, that's the foundation of any democratic thing you are doing, because when we had a military regime, you always had the executive and the judiciary, with the military making the laws and then only allowing the judiciary to interpret it. They make and execute. So with this, I will encourage them to work well, to build the institution and grow it in such a way that we'll be able to make our democracy to become, a reference point in a very positive way.
Thank you so much again, but somehow you did not answer my question.
Which
I'm
is
talking about the politicking right now, especially it's more on the floor of the House. The Senate has, seems to be having it cool, but a lot of consultations, meeting here and there. I know I've had to be at the meeting up to 11 p.m. recently with a faction of some lawmakers. So I just want something from you on that.
Absolutely, and that's what I told you, that as someone emerges, that the person and his team should work well with others. I answered your question, but I don't know exactly what you're asking for. So as someone emerges, I'm wishing them well, but let them have at the back of their mind that, look, this is an institution that they have to defend, and they have to strengthen and deepen and broaden democratic ethos so that we'll be referred to in a very positive light.
All right, thank you so much. We've been having Honorable Sam ONUIGBO on the Mace today. He has talked so well on the performance of the 9th House of Representatives and the National Assembly generally.
Yes.
Unfortunately, he's one of the lawmakers we are going to be missing when the 10th Assembly is inaugurated, but like he did say, he's going to fall back to the classroom because he's a good lecturer. Thank you so much for coming.
Teacher, lecturer on a high one. Teacher, that's more.
Let me just quantify it.
Teacher, that's more one.
All right, thank you so much for coming on the Mace today.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Thank you so much too for being part of the program. I'm afraid this is where we have to call it off on the Mace for this week. Next week is a deal. Join us. I am Rosemary Kokotega. Bye.